billion for investment by state government. It's time to seize this opportunity as we emerge from this crisis and build back stronger. These investments must be smart, equitable, and effective. We are prioritizing assisting families most impacted by the pandemic, upgrading our infrastructure, preparing our workforce, and promoting business development and innovation. The Director of the Office of State Budget and Management, Charlie Perouse, will share more details in a minute. But first, I want to talk to you about the importance of these investments and what they can do for our state. This pandemic upended everyone's lives, but we must leverage these funds to support those who've been hit the hardest. And this budget recommends funding for the most basic needs, such as affordable housing and food security. It includes another round of extra credit grants, a program started by Republican leaders in the legislature. This will help a lot of parents with direct grants of up to $500. And it recommends funds to strengthen our education system. Every child in North Carolina deserves a sound, basic education. More than that, they have a constitutional right to it. As the court affirmed in the Leandro case, we must do more to make this a reality for children, regardless of race, background, or zip code. This includes expanding pre-K and investing in home-based early childhood literacy interventions. An important part of having better educated kids is recruiting and retaining qualified and quality teachers. This budget recommends funding to hire literacy coaches and strengthen teacher training that'll also help many of them teach reading in more effective ways, as recommended in new legislation passed by the General Assembly. We also propose scholarship support to teachers to keep them in our schools. Our most ambitious recommendation is to connect everyone in this state together and with the world with high-speed internet. As the pandemic has highlighted, having access to high-speed internet is more important than ever to learn, to get a job, to see a doctor, to start a business, and to stay connected. More than 1 million households in North Carolina lack affordable and reliable access to the internet. Our recommended budget invests $1.2 billion to help close the digital divide by building infrastructure, making a connection affordable, and ensuring people can afford a device and know how to use it. It's a truly comprehensive, well-planned approach that will aggressively close the gaps. These investments will ensure that every home with a school-aged child will have access to high-speed internet. Our goal is that by 2025, North Carolina will be a national leader, ranking in the top 5 states for high-speed internet adoption. This must be a priority, as we cannot lose this chance to close the digital divide. There are other immediate needs we must address. More than 100 communities in our state have aging water systems that they can't afford to fix. Many of them are getting some money directly from the federal government through the American Rescue Plan. We have a plan to match state and local American Rescue Plan funds to rebuild these systems in a smart, regional way so families can have clean water and these small communities can attract more economic growth. And that economic growth depends on a well-trained workforce. Now, in 2019, I stood with our bipartisan legislative leaders, university, community college, and business leaders to promise that by 2030, we would have 2 million more adults with a college degree or a trade credential. It's now 2021, and with the American Rescue Plan, we can invest in our future to make sure that this happens. Our university, community college, and independent colleges have been working with each other, the legislature, and my office on a plan to use federal funds to give a guaranteed scholarship to more than 200,000 North Carolinians each year. We are seeing real success in recruiting good-paying jobs in our state, with dozens of companies moving to or expanding in North Carolina in just the last few months, with a lot more to come. But they need skilled workers to fill the positions. We should match those great jobs with our own homegrown workers. And with these guaranteed scholarships, we can do it, and we can reach our goal of having 2 million better trained workers. We also need to help businesses that have been hurt by this pandemic, help them recover and thrive. Our hospitality industry was among the hardest hit. Many restaurants and hotels and others worked hard to protect their employees and their customers by implementing strong safety protocols. We responded last year with the Mortgage, Utility, and Rent Relief Program, or MER, to help these businesses. But we need to do even more. This budget proposes significant direct assistance to help our businesses recover from lost revenue in order to be able to grow. We also implemented the Retool program last year to provide direct support to historically underutilized businesses. We know that minority and women-owned businesses often suffer disproportionately and have a more difficult time accessing capital. This proposal includes support for these businesses, recognizing their vital contributions to our communities. And we know that to grow, we must innovate. This budget looks to the future by including funding for health research within the University of North Carolina system. UNC Chapel Hill is a worldwide leader in developing antiviral drugs that fight against diseases like COVID-19. This proposal would take them to a new level by funding the Rapidly Emerging Antiviral Drug Development Initiative, or READY for short, which will attract more private and federal funding, create good-paying jobs, and help discover life-saving drugs. It would also provide vital funding to Winston-Salem State University's Center for Excellence for Elimination of Health Disparities, so that we can continue to combat the unequal impact of health outcomes on our communities of color. We also know that local governments have been on the front line of this pandemic, and I'm grateful for our local leaders across the state who've worked to keep their communities safe and their economies moving. Cities, towns, and counties are receiving over $3 billion directly from the American Rescue Plan, which can do a lot. Our recommendation includes funding to help these local governments build the necessary capacity to invest these dollars effectively and efficiently. With this proposal, we also acknowledge that while every state, county, town, and federally recognized American Indian tribe received direct funding from the American Rescue Plan, our state-recognized tribes did not, despite the vital services they provide to tribal members. Our recommendation includes $18 million in direct assistance for 7 American Indian tribes recognized by North Carolina that too often have been overlooked. I want to thank everyone across the state who's given us input on this proposal, including legislators from both parties. A lot of people and businesses need help now, and this proposal provides that. But permanent progress requires transformational change, and this proposal provides that too. We can make our communities more livable if we improve access to affordable housing, if we invest in our businesses with direct assistance, if we strengthen our educator pipeline and expand our workforce education and training, if we upgrade our aging infrastructure and help households and businesses get connected with high-speed internet access. An unprecedented pandemic requires unprecedented investment. If we meet this moment, we'll build a stronger and more equitable future that can help all North Carolinians thrive. We'll now hear from Charlie Perouse, the Director of the Office of Budget and Management. After his presentation, I will be available to take questions along with other members of my staff. I also have with me today our Secretary of Health and Human Services, Dr. Mandy Cohen, and Emergency Management Chief of Staff, Will Ray. Lee Williamson and Brian Tipton are our sign language interpreters, and behind the scenes, Jackie Mativier and Erica Kugler are our Spanish language interpreters. Charlie, I will recognize you to make a more detailed presentation on this proposal. Thanks.
Thank you, Governor Cooper, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm Charlie Peru, State Budget Director, and I'm pleased to present the Governor's American Rescue Plan budget recommendations. Thought it would be helpful to provide some additional context around the ARP. It was signed into law by President Biden on March 11, 2021, followed by federal Treasury guidance assistance on the allowable uses of these monies on May 10th. Funds must be obligated by December 31, 2024 and expended by December 31, 2026. The American Rescue Plan funds to North Carolina, totaling an estimated $5.7 billion, will come in two programs. The first and the largest piece is the state fiscal relief funding, totaling $5.4 billion, and a little under $300 million for critical capital projects. The $5.4 billion in state fiscal relief funds will come in two equal tranches. We received $2.7 billion of the first tranche yesterday and expect to receive the additional $2.7 billion 12 months from now, and the state will apply for the critical capital projects funds later this summer. In addition, as the governor mentioned, local governments across the state are getting through $3.2 billion, and that will go to all 100 counties and 550 municipalities statewide. As the governor mentioned, North Carolina's recovery is in sight, but the needs throughout North Carolina remain great. The employment rate for low-wage workers is down 13% over the last year, and the labor participation rate is down 2%. The labor participation rate is especially down among minority and women. Secondly, entertainment spending is down 30% statewide. Housing assistance requests are up 36%. 59% of North Carolinians lack access to affordable high-speed internet, and only 50% of eligible children attend an NC pre-K program. As the governor shared his vision for a shared recovery for a stronger North Carolina, his recommendations fall into five main areas, including assisting families and individuals hardest hit, upgrading our infrastructure, preparing the workforce of the future, promoting business development and innovation, and positioning government to best serve North Carolinians. The first recommendation for assisting families and individuals hardest hit is $575 million to expand affordable housing. This includes $500 million to develop and rehab approximately 3,000 rental and 3,500 new housing units statewide. In addition, it includes $75 million in down payment assistance for low-income, first-time home buyers. This $75 million includes $8,000 of standard assistance for first-time home buyers and up to $15,000 of enhanced assistance for public school teachers. We anticipate this home buyer assistance program would assist 5,000 to 9,000 home buyers statewide. As the governor mentioned, he's recommending a $250 million extra credit grant 2.0 proposal based mainly on the proposal that was implemented by the legislature last year with a couple of modifications. Grants would be eligible to families with children based on their 2019 adjusted gross income. Grants would be tailored toward low and middle income families. The maximum grant of $500 would be provided to families with incomes of $15,000 to $30,000, and $250 grants would be provided to families of incomes of $30,000 to $60,000. And we anticipate that this assistance would reach an estimated 660,000 families statewide. Next, the governor recommends a comprehensive health and wellness promotion program that really targets the major risk factors that folks may have and make them more susceptible to COVID-19. Specifically, it recommends $15 million each to the major risk factors, including diabetes, heart disease and stroke, obesity, cancer, tobacco, and youth health, as well as providing $15 million for healthy communities and $15 million for injury and violence prevention activities statewide. We've talked a lot about food security, and the governor recommends an additional $64 million to enhance food security efforts statewide. This includes $28 million to bolster small farms and emergency food operations like food banks. It also includes $32 million to strengthen local food systems and to expand nutrition education. A lot of these funds will go through nonprofits and church organizations, and $4 million to reduce college hunger. We anticipate this $64 million recommendation would benefit 90 community organizations, hundreds of farmers and roadside stands statewide, and students at universities and community colleges statewide. Next, the governor recommends $65 million to help vulnerable individuals and families, including $28 million to support families at risk of homelessness, with a major focus on seniors, disabled persons, and kids transitioning from foster care. It also includes an additional $20 million for domestic violence and sexual assault victims, $10 million to support family givers, and $7 million for vulnerable youth. In addition, the governor recommends $300 million to ensure a sound basic education and for early childhood development. In the sound basic education area includes $75 million to hire reading literacy coaches in all 300 low-performing elementary schools, and $65 million to develop a skilled educator pipeline. In the early childhood development space, it recommends $102 million to improve access to pre-K and $58 million for home-based early literacy programs. The next set of recommendations are around upgrading infrastructure. The governor mentioned his $1.2 billion proposal to close the digital divide statewide, with the goal of making North Carolina a top 5 state in high-speed internet adoption with rates above 80% statewide, achieve 100% adoption for homes with children, and to fully close equity gaps by 2025. This $1.2 billion is broken up into $600 million for infrastructure needs, a little over $400 million to ensure affordability, $165 million for digital literacy and enablement, and $15 million for operational support. In addition, the governor recommends $800 million for water, sewer, and stormwater program. A little bit of context here, the state of North Carolina has 550 water sewer units statewide, of which about 200 of them are small units with less than 2,000 customers, and over 200 of them are on the distressed or at-risk unit list. This proposal aims to really help those distressed and at-risk units by providing $440 million for those projects. A distressed or regionalization project would be 100% state funded, and any at-risk unit would be 75%, 25% state to local match. And we anticipate that this $440 million would assist 65 to 130 units statewide. In addition, there's $360 million for other critical projects which would focus on our larger municipalities. They would be on a 50% state, 50% local match, and we anticipate that $360 million reaching about 30 projects statewide. In addition, the governor recommends $160 million for lead and asbestos abatement remediation in schools and child care facilities, including $35 million for lead testing and remediation of drinking water, and $125 million for lead and asbestos abatement activities. In addition, the governor's proposal recommends $175 million for rural downtown transformation grants. This includes $60 million for neighborhood revitalization projects, $100 million for local transformation projects, and $15 million to acquire land in demolished old buildings. We anticipate this $175 million would support 100+ downtown district projects statewide. The next set of recommendations are around preparing the workforce. As the governor mentioned, we're all very excited about his proposal called the North Carolina Guarantee Scholarship. This $350 million recommendation would be eligible to all full and part-time students at UNC and community colleges. It would provide at least $6,000 a year for family incomes of less than $60 with a phase out down to $7,500. And we expect that this $6,000 assistance would assist at least 72,000 students statewide. On top of that, the governor recommends recovery scholarships for UNC and community college students totaling $270 million. These monies would provide financial stability for our poorest students. It would also be eligible to all full and part-time students at UNC and community colleges, and it would provide up to an additional $1,000 per year for students with family incomes less than $35,000. This proposal also recommends $95 million in recovery scholarship funds for our students at our independent colleges and universities. This one is also would provide financial stability for our poorest students and would be eligible to all full and part-time students at our independent colleges, and it would provide up to an additional $1,750 per year for students receiving existing need-based scholarship funds. In addition, the governor recommends $60 million for summer accelerator grants. These monies would assist students in need of remedial support so they can stay on track to graduate. And finally, in this area, the governor recommends $60 million for finish line grants. This would provide up to $1,000 per semester for students with severe financial emergencies. This $1,000 per semester assistance would provide monies for housing, medical transportation, and other needs. And we anticipate these monies would help at least 20,000 students per year. Continuing with the preparing the workforce recommendations, the governor proposes $150 million to purchase 21st century technology and equipment for all of our higher education sectors, focusing on equipment and IT needs in high demand fields, including STEM, health, and the construction areas. This would provide $75 million to community colleges, $45 million to the UNC system, and $30 million to independent colleges. The governor also recommends $25 million to reconnect the workforce, and these monies would be targeted support to underrepresented populations, women, and youth. Transitioning now to several recommendations in the business development and innovation area. The governor mentioned in his remarks how the impact has been on the hospitality industry. This bold recommendation provides $350 million to help these businesses statewide, including $300 million, or about 10% of revenue loss for 12,000 bars, restaurants, and hotels statewide. In addition, it provides $50 million for small business recovery, supporting 1,000 to 2,000 businesses statewide. In addition, the governor's recommendation includes $50 million for economic sites development. These monies would be used for critical infrastructure to attract new businesses to North Carolina. This $50 million would be focused on mega sites, distressed communities, and green energy sector jobs. In addition, the governor recommends $50 million for strategic industry development and this $50 million would provide direct grants to local governments for infrastructure and workforce programs. As the governor mentioned, small and historically underutilized businesses have been impacted greatly by the pandemic. This $50 million would build on recommendations that were done last year, including an additional $40 million for grants up to $50,000 to support small and hub businesses with working capital. We anticipate this $40 million would reach 750 businesses statewide. In addition, this recommendation includes $6 million for business recovery counseling and $4 million for second stage growth assistance. Continuing in the business development and innovation area is a $45 million recommendation to expand motorsports and outdoor events opportunities. We know that motorsports is a $5 billion industry in North Carolina, and we're the proud home of NASCAR. And this recommendation builds on this by providing $30 million or $10 million each for repairs and infrastructure improvements at the 3 large NASCAR tracks in North Carolina, the Rock, the North Wilkesboro Speedway, and Charlotte Motor Speedway. In addition, it provides $10 million in grant monies for smaller racing venues statewide, as well as $5 million to develop, connect, and market a new motorsports and moonshine heritage trail. The governor mentioned that the UNC System Health Research Innovation, a $75 million recommendation, recognizes that UNC Chapel Hill is the highest ranked COVID-19 research university in the nation, and this recommendation provides $50 million for the READY program to accelerate future drug development. In addition, this recommendation also provides $25 million to expand health research capabilities at our 6 UNC historically minority-serving institutions. Continuing in the business development innovation, we know that the arts and entertainment industry has been hurt hard. The governor recommends $60 million to restart the arts, history, science, libraries, and film. We anticipate in this area it may take them 2 to 3 years to recover from the pandemic. It provides $45 million in grants for museums, libraries, and cultural centers statewide. We anticipate that about 1,000 organizations would be eligible to receive these monies. In addition, it includes $2.5 million each to the Symphony and the Museum of Art, and $10 million for the film industry to build sound stages and sets. In the final area, positioning government to best serve North Carolina, as the governor mentioned, his proposal recommends $65 million in local government assistance. This includes $41 million to provide direct assistance to smaller local government units through the League of Municipalities, the County Commissioners Association, the Council of Governments, and $24 million to hold the towns of Huntersville and Apex harmless, so those towns receive funding amounts that align with their original congressional estimates. In addition, the governor mentioned the $18 million recommendation for state-recognized American Indian tribes. This includes $16 million in direct assistance to the 7 tribes recognized by North Carolina, but not the federal government, $2 million for small business grants and other assistance, and we anticipate this $18 million would assist approximately 67,000 American Indians and over 1,000 American Indian businesses. Finally, in the positioning government to best serve North Carolina area, the governor's ARP proposal recommends $100 million to the state health plan to cover COVID-19 cost, $79 million to support the continuity of state government operations, and $50 million for ventilation and other renovation needs at the Department of Public Safety and DHHS facilities statewide. The governor, Dr. Cohen, and I are available to answer questions.
Thank you, Charlie. Thanks to you and the staff and everybody who had input into this. It's a lot of work, a lot of thought, and this is actually only part of the funds that North Carolina will have to invest in our future. But we will now open it up for questions. If you can identify yourself and your organization, we'd appreciate it. As I said, Dr. Cohen and Charlie and Will Ray are all here to answer questions that you might have. We'll take the first one.
A reminder to our reporters on the line, please press 1 to ask a question. Governor Cooper will be available for a few questions, and Budget Director Charlie Peruce will stay available after. Our first question will be from Gary Robertson with the Associated Press.
It's Gary at AP. A lot of these projects that you're hoping to spend the money on are one-time projects. There's some other things like the scholarships that would be for multi-years, it would seem like, but that COVID money is going to run out sooner or later. It may happen after you leave office, but do you envision these recovery scholarships and the guarantee program to be something permanent, or is that something that needs to be settled on at a later date?
Great question, Gary. And yes, most of the recommendations that we have are for one-time investments like infrastructure, water, and sewer. But we have 5 years in which to invest this money over a 5-year period of time. We're trying to emerge from the pandemic, so we need a shot in the arm, particularly in the area of education and workforce training. And if we get 5 years down the road and we see that we don't need to continue with this investment anymore, then we won't. But when you look at the demand that we have for skilled workers in all of these jobs that we are creating, and the challenges that our children have had doing remote learning and trying to catch up, we do need to invest in things that we could potentially continue to invest in the future, but recognize that it could be for a finite period of time to help get us out of this pandemic. Next question, please.
Our next question is from Dawn Vaughn with the News and Observer.
Hi, Governor Cooper. Dawn Vaughn with the NNO. It's my understanding that the rescue plan funds do allow for hazard pay for essential workers. I don't see that in the proposal. Is bonuses are another way to provide any of that part of the overall state budget negotiations instead?
We're in a good situation here where we're able to piece together a number of different kinds of funds to do that kind of thing. And I'm going to let Charlie Peruce answer that question.
Thank you. Yeah, this proposal does include money in the continuity of operations bucket, about $80 million, which may cover some outstanding needs for hazard duty pay across the state.
Thanks. Next question, please.
We have a follow-up, Dawn Vaughn, News and Observer.
Hi, thanks for the follow. About the extra credit grants 2.0, obviously there's some range in spending amounts between this and which is now a House Republican proposal for $1,000 to all families. Where do you see the middle ground here on signing a bill that would fund money for parents?
Well, this was a good idea put forth by the legislature. It has helped a lot of families. We included this in our proposal because it's input that we got from a number of legislators that they would like to continue it. Yeah, the program's structured a little bit differently. We have means tested it. In other words, providing this benefit to people who make less than a certain amount. I believe it's $60,000, but certainly willing to work with the legislature. And I think they have a mind where they want to invest more in extra credit grants, and I feel like this is something that we can agree on as we go forward in this process. Next question, please.
Our next question is from Michael Hyland with CBS 17.
I had a couple questions initially related to the extra credit grants as well. Why did you all decide to put an income limit on the proposal that you have here? And have you come up with any better of a way to ensure that the lowest income people actually get these payments? Because for the last several months, that's been an issue with people who don't make enough money to have to file state taxes.
Your second part of the question. What was your first part of the question, Michael? I'm sorry.
Sure, no problem. I was asking why you all decided to put the income limit in place. As I understand, in the first round of the extra credit grants, it went to everyone regardless of what you made.
Right. Well, we decided we would propose an income limit because we need to try to get the money to the families that need it most, and plus it can make that payment to those families larger. You know, a lot of people are doing well as we are emerging from the pandemic. A lot of people are invested in the stock market and have good paying jobs. But there are a lot of people who are on the edge too, and I'd rather increase that amount of extra credit grant money to those parents who have children who are at a lower income bracket. And yeah, it is a challenge to be able to find all of the people that get this money. The Department of Revenue, however, with the last round of extra credit grants, has been able to assemble a database where I believe that they could work even harder to try to make sure that they get that money. Charlie, do you know any other efforts that they are making to make sure that they get that money? Okay. Yeah, they are working on ways to do that. The General Assembly gave the Department of Revenue the job of making sure this money is distributed, and of course, only people who file taxes did they have access to. But now we've grown that database from the first round and hope to make sure that we get it to more of these families who are desperately in need. Next question, please.
We have a follow-up. Michael Hyland, CBS 17.
Thank you. I also wanted to follow up on Dawn's initial questions. She had asked, there were some state employees at the General Assembly today that were pushing for you all to include, to use some of the funding from this, obviously, to do their hazard pay, but they also want to address some of the staffing issues, particularly at some DHHS facilities over the last year that have been exacerbated by the pandemic. Does this also go toward, in any way, trying to increase staffing and fill some of those vacant jobs at some, particularly DHHS facilities that have been working on, with people working on the front lines and sometimes treating COVID-19 patients?
Let Charlie address the specifics of that.
Thank you for the question. There's a piece of this that we didn't go over, but that's included in our budget documents. There's another $10 billion of federal